Okay, so this is going to be an overview on social media. So let's put social media in the bottom, in the middle, even. And we've got these different categories. We've got types, we've got functions, we've got our purpose, and we've then got impact. So these are the 4 different categories that we need to be aware of to do with social media. So let's look at, to begin with, the different types. We've got social networking. We've got media sharing. We've got discussion networks. We've got bookmarking and content curation, consumer review, blogging, social shopping. Let me just move this. Where can I do some space? Here we go. Interest-based social networks. We've got anonymous social networks. I'm going to do social N for network, and merged social media / gaming. That's just gaming. So let's break these down into examples. So let's zoom in on social networking. You've got things such as Facebook, Twitter. Let's zoom out slightly. Instagram. I'm just going to do Insta, and like LinkedIn. For media sharing, you've got YouTube, Snapchat, Vimeo, and obviously TikTok. I'm going to do TikTok up here. Discussion networks, Reddit, Quora, Stack Exchange. If you don't know what these are, Google them. They're very useful to be aware of and discuss. So this is what I used to use for coding, to give me help and support, or to see what other people are having problems with before ChatGPT came along. So people to share ideas basically and solutions to problems. Bookmarking, you've got like Pinterest, Flipboard, Scoop.it. If you don't know what those are, have a look at them. Consumer reviews, where you've got TripAdvisor, Yelp. You've got Amazon and Google reviews. So Amazon reviews, that means customer. You've got Angie's List. In terms of blogging, we've got WordPress, we've got Tumblr, Medium. In terms of social shopping, we've got Fancy, Etsy. So what is meant by social shopping? This is the official definition. Have a read of it. Pause the video and have a read. Let's have a look at Etsy. People come together. Blah, 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 blah. So it's kind of like Amazon community. Okay, so I'm guessing these are just people who work together. So anyone can put their products on and sell their products, and they're part of a network. I bet they have like a forum or a Facebook group as well. Interesting. So I've never really come across social shopping myself. Alright, we then got interest-based, where we've got things like Goodreads. I like Goodreads. It shows me books which other people read and I read, and alternatives. That's the them. Strava's a good one. So when I go out for a run once a year, I can see my performance against other people's. You've got Ravelry, which is a community for knitters and people who like doing crochet. So it's people with the same interest together as a network. It doesn't mean you talk to them, but you can still see their information, like with Strava. You've then got anonymous. So things like Whisper. So let's have a look at Whisper. So it's kind of like Instagram or Snapchat, but you have an anonymous details. No one knows who you are. You get given a username, and that's it. So you can make posts and stuff, but no one really knows who you are. There are other types you can look at. So for example, there is 4chan and Omegle. If you're curious to find out what they're about, Google them. We've then got merge social media. So I'm going to put merge social media / gaming here. So this is like your Twitch. So it's a combination of gaming, video, streaming together. Discord. Even Roblox is counted as that. Social media and game combined. So it's merging different types together. Okay, so there are different types. So not only do we need to know about the different types, which is what we see here. If I zoom out and in, the next thing we need to be aware of is the fact that you should be able to know the types and know the different websites, but also functions. Now, basically the functions of social media are quite easy. So if I was to say to you, profile settings, changing your profiles, having status updates, or wall updates, or story updates, being able to upload media, being able to message people, output messaging, having notifications, news feeds, comments and reactions, sharing, saving or bookmarking, privacy and security. All of this is really easy. And integration with other platforms. I'll talk about that now. So for example, Discord works with PlayStation and Xbox and Steam. So if I'm playing a game on Steam, people can see what I'm playing. So it's working, two different platforms working together. Now, these functions, you need to be aware of what each one's about, but you should be able to also map them to the different types of social media. So for example, if I said to you, let's talk about social networking, what functions do you have in Facebook or Twitter or any of those? Well, you'll say you've got profile settings, status updates, blah, 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 notifications, newsfeeds. So most of these would be that. Okay, what about though in anonymous social networking? So you need to be able to, for one of these, be able to talk about how they use these functions. So you might have to do a little bit of your own research into that. Shouldn't take you too long. Social shopping. Well, that's easy enough. When you're shopping on an online store, what of these settings do you think you would have? I would probably say comments, sharing, profile, privacy and security, saving, bookmarking things. So that's easy. But still go on one of those stores and have a look. Blogging. If you don't know too much about WordPress or Tumblr or Medium, have a look and see if they map and how these functions map against it. For a lot of these, you should know already, and they're common sense, but you do need to have an understanding of at least one of these for each different type. So you should be able to, for example, discussion network. If you know about Reddit, great. What functions do you have on Reddit? Consumer reviews like TripAdvisor, what functions do you have on that? Say, for example, you'll do comments, you could do sharing, you can do saving. You have your own account, so you need profile. Does it integrate with other platforms? I think it might integrate with Facebook, but you have to have a look. Do you have a newsfeed on TripAdvisor? Have a look. Can you get notifications? Yes, you can, but have a look why and how. So that's something for you to do. So these are the different functions. Know about each one of these functions, understand what they do, but then map them against the different types. Okay, we've then got the purpose of social media. Now, the purpose of social media, we're going to break it down into two different categories. We're going to have individuals, and we're going to have organizations. And everything that we talk about for purpose will link to from an individual perspective and an organization perspective. So, for example, data protection. And with data protection, you've got the Data Protection Act and GDPR. So, for an individual, your data will get protected if you're got your personal details on a website like Amazon, because the Data Protection Act by law forces people to do that, like Amazon are forced to store your data and protect it. So you could be rest assured that your data is protected. If it's not protected, you can sue. If your information gets leaked, you can take it further. For organizations, they're responsible for ensuring that your data is protected. So they're responsible for putting in place the right defense mechanisms for the Data Protection Act, i.e. encrypting your data, i.e. having a firewall, i.e. making sure that if things are hacked, they report it straight away. And GDPR is, and for Europe, these are rules, if you live in Europe, that organizations have to follow to keep your data safe and secure, similar to the Data Protection Act. With the Data Protection Act, organizations can't sell your data. There are rules around that. So from an organization perspective, this is all about how they basically, I would say, enforce. And for individuals, it's about how they're protected for the Data Protection Act. So you need to be able to understand it and discuss it from two different perspectives, from a customer or individual and an organization. So what about libel? So from an organization and individual perspective, you need to be able to understand how sharing posts could become libel. So if you're an individual, you see a post which says that King Charles, this is by the way just fictional, or let's make up a king so I don't get sued. King Declan has murdered 4 people, and I saw that and I shared it. I could get sued for libel as an individual. Organizations are responsible for their employees. If somebody from their organization makes a libel claim, so imagine I work for the school, which I do, and I share a post about King Declan killing people. If the school saw that, I could get fired because the school, the organisation, is responsible for me as an individual when I use online social media. You might see on people's accounts where they say, my views are my own and not the organisation I'm working for. That's them as organisations, as individuals trying to protect themselves from their business. So people, for example, who work for the BBC will say online, my views just represent me and not the BBC. So whatever I say, I can't get fired for. That's people's way of going around. Trolling. Now, for an individual, trolling again could get you into disciplinary actions. Companies are responsible for monitoring trolling, but also what happens if they do trolling themselves? So it's really all about ensuring that people ethically are using social media well. You've then got deliberate misconceptions or miscommunications or misrepresentation. So, for example, during Brexit, there was a lot of companies out there who were paying the government to support Brexit, so there's a lot of false messages about the benefits of Brexit. Not all of them are true, or were true, even at the time. They're just making things up. So they're deliberately miscommunicating to try and get their own way. If an individual does that, there's not as much damage, I suppose, unless that individual is in a power and responsibility. So, for example, if a well-respected athlete was deliberately miscommunicating online to trick people, like, let's take Logan Paul. Logan Paul, by supporting scams, deliberately miscommunicating, people trust him. So, again, ethically and even legally, he's been taken to court over that. Organisations also, because a lot of organisations, as I said, work with governments and have their own power play. Like, for example, in England, Sky TV are very right-wing. They want, they're owned by, or let's use actually the Daily Mail, that's a great one, newspapers owned by right-wing media publish things which suit their agenda. They try and push through things to the government, so they have a lot of power over the government. So deliberately miscommunication, misrepresentation. Is it illegal? So certain times it is, but other times it's just breaking ethics. But everyone's got a responsibility to play, organisations and individuals. We then got, let's just move to the right, social isolation and bullying. So again, how do individuals use social media? Do they do that? Do they on purpose bully people, make people feel uncomfortable, etc., really aggressive with their posts? If they are, what are the consequences? What would be those consequences? And what about organisations? There have been stories of organisations who have used social media to make people feel uncomfortable and bully. So again, are they breaking any laws? Are they just breaking ethics? What's the professional implication for those organisations or those individuals? If it's an individual working for a company and they've been seen to be using social media for bullying, will they get fired for that company? So for example, if I'm working for BBC and I'm bullying somebody online and I'm seen to be doing that, what's the consequence for me? We've then got, let's just do another branch. So use of social media, let me just as a source of info about individual. So that is really more to do with an organisation rather than the individual themselves, but the individual is related to this as well. Allow me to explain. Is it fair that organisations look at people's Facebook profiles and Instagram profiles and wall posts, etc., before they employ someone? Or, for example, you're working for me, I want to fire you, so I want to look for reasons to fire you. I then go onto your social media and see embarrassing photos of you. Is it fair that organizations are able to do that? Should they be able to go into your private social media accounts to find information about you which affect your employment? So use of social media as a source of information, so individuals need to ensure that their information is protected. Organizations need to use things responsibly, but they're not breaking any law. But is it ethical? Is it professional for organizations to do that? You could argue yes. If it's out there in the public, they've got every right to use it. That's why it's ethical, because there's no real right or wrong to do with that. Okay, we've then got paying third parties to promote social media posts, normally to do with products. Or person, even if it's positive, positive or negative. So let's talk about that. Is it fair that companies use bots to spam out their viewpoints to promote products? Is it fair for social media or for companies to pay for likes about a product? It's like paying for fake reviews. Imagine you've just released a book and you paid 100,000 people, like $5 each, to give it a 5-star rating. Is that ethically fair? Is that legally against the law? No, but is it ethically fair? Probably not. So is it fair for paying third parties to do things like promote social media posts, even if it's for a positive, i.e., like for a product? Or let's imagine someone's made a comment on Twitter which a company agrees with. Like, let's imagine that somebody puts "I hate Pepsi" on Twitter, and Coca-Cola sees this, and then they pay a third party to basically boost that tweet, which then does disjustice or injustice, I suppose, to Pepsi, because it's got hundreds of thousands of likes saying "I hate Pepsi," which brings it to the front of people's algorithms. Is that fair? So, paying third parties for promotion. And then we need to look at power and pain of having hundreds of thousands of followers on social media. So you've got people like Beyonce, who's got over 340 million. Does she even need to do interviews anymore if she can just talk directly to people? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Footballers being able to talk directly to people, good thing or bad thing? Think about a footballer who makes a comment about his club to fans on his own personal account, and it comes out negatively. If you're unsure what I mean, have a look at, on Google or YouTube, Ivan Toney Brentford comments. It's a good comments plural. That Ivan Toney Brentford comments. Please feel free, I advise you to have a look at that. And then talk about power and pain. Someone who's got so many followers, is that right for him to make the comments he did about Brentford Football Club, who he plays for? You've then got J.K. Rowling, who's received loads of death threats online, abuse, comments she's made about transgender. So she's made some strong, controversial comments. Is it right for her to be able to do that? Is it right for the abuse she gets? It's looking at both those things. So all of these aspects are about the purpose of social media from an individual's perspective and an organization's perspective. Organizations have responsibilities individuals have responsibilities. Also, individuals should be protected. Keep that in mind. And finally, and this is something which we really haven't covered in the lesson, but we will do when we get back, but it'll be good for you guys to get a head start. It's the impact of social media. So I'm going to actually just change this so we get a bit more space. So if we look at the impact of social media, we're going to have positives. So I'm going to go this way for positives. And obviously we're going to have the negatives. Oopsie daisy. So positives so social networking allows people to communicate. And that could be stay in contact with friends. When you go off to college and you leave the island, you'll still be able to communicate with your friends. In the olden days, you wouldn't be able to do that. Well, you'll be able to use a phone, but it's not the same. Stay in contact or meet new people. So I was playing League of Legends, and I met a few new people who I've started playing with because they're better than me. So I just joined their little group. I'm not going to call it a clan because it ain't a clan, but you get the idea. And I hope it's great, not only to allow you to communicate, but find people with similar interests, like Discord servers, Facebook groups. Find people with similar interests. It could be great for creative expression. People sharing their work, people sharing their blogs, people sharing their artwork, other people, say through blogging or social media sharing or retweets, for example. So you've also got, I'm going to create a new branch for this, education. That's written really badly. So, everything I've mentioned so far, you could argue it's a lot of that has to do with social networking. And they could be all interlinked. Meeting new people, creating expressions, meeting new people, find people with similar interests like Discord groups. You know, all of that is social networking. You've also got education. So social networking, again, can improve education. How? Well, believe it or not, there's an argument to say that it can improve your quality of life. Reduce health risks. How? Well, if you use it in a responsible way and you're quite closed off, there are benefits. You know, spending time from an education perspective, you know, schools using it well, for example, using firewalls, it helps with learning, it helps with lessons. Reducing health risks, well, if it's used sensibly, etc., again, you can learn new information. That information could help you with reducing health risks, like eating healthy online, finding different diets, etc. Having high entertainment reduces stress. But from an education perspective, schools are using it, as we said, as an educational tool. It gives you diverse views. Allows you to communicate with people all over the world. No barriers. Access to tools, tutorials, professionals. So YouTube is a tool which you can be used for tutorials. Reddit is a great tool where you can talk to different professionals. All of these different aspects could benefit education if used well. It allows a lot of self-learning, which I suppose is then linked to like the tools. So students themselves can find out tutorials, etc., how to do things. We then got businesses. So positives, another positive. Businesses. So you've got cheaper advertising, which can then be specific or more targeted. So for example, on Facebook, I could advertise a website I'm making, which is for AI examination marking. And I can advertise it to all teachers. It can look at every single person on Facebook with teacher in their profile and just advertise it to those people and nobody else. That means I'm paying for advertising, which is specific for the people I want to see. Whereas in old school advertising, it'd be like having a billboard where everyone can see it, or me sending out flyers to everybody, hoping that somebody's got an interest. Even YouTube adverts are based on things you've watched in the past or might have an interest in. Not all the time, but most of the time. Or where you live. So you get a lot of Cayman adverts because we live in the Cayman Islands, or Caribbean adverts, so to speak. So it's more specific. It's lower costs. You've also got, I suppose, with the social networking, it is another form of advertising, but builds up reputation and customer base. So because you get an online profile, people start knowing about you. But also businesses, I'm not saying this is correct, can use social media, what this is, to scout information about potential employees or their current employees. When they're making their decisions. Again, we talked about the ethics of that. We've talked about the ethics of that. Yeah, it's very grey. But for businesses, it is a huge positive. I'm running out of room for positive, so let me just create a new link up here. The final one is mobility. Accessed from anywhere. The digital divide is less because you can access it on many devices, even really cheap devices. You can go on Facebook and etc. But it also allows people from anywhere to share photos, videos. Let me just from anywhere, messages. So it helps people who live in remote locations. So it does help people who live in remote locations. Digital divide is less because you can get even people who, like in poor countries, can get garbage internet, garbage phone, but still access social media. It allows those people to access things like YouTube videos for tutorials, etc. But then we've got the negatives. few of these. So reduces face-to-face interactions, which people believe lower quality relationships. Leads to teenagers, and even adults, to overshare info. This could lead to future issues with employment. There's tons of stories of teens who have posted inappropriate photos, and then 5 years later being told, we're not going to take you on for a job because we've seen this photo online of you. The digital footprint. And also people are oversharing their information to the public. I've seen on Twitter many sensitive posts about individuals. Sometimes you think, hang on a minute, do you really want to be sharing this with the world? Another negative, cyberbullying, especially people with anonymous profiles like game profiles, game nicknames, usernames. There's lots of research which shows people with usernames tend to be more toxic than if you're using your real name online, because it's like hiding behind a mask. So cyberbullying, which can lead to suicide, and it has done, depression. You've got also social isolation. And here's the thing, once people get depressed and have once people get into depression, sometimes they're looking for negatives, and it's not because they're doing it on purpose, it's to confirm how they think about themselves. So there used to be a website called askme.com or something like that, where people would say, I want you to tell me what you really think about me, and make a post, and then any of your friends or anyone from your school could interact with you, but they'll be anonymous, and a lot of the time there'll be really horrible negative comments. But why would people make the first post in the first place saying, tell me what you think about me? A lot of the time it's because it's self confirmation, where people are feeling down about themselves and are looking for other people to make those comments to get that agreement. You've then got social isolation, which leads to less social skills. Again, go to a restaurant and see how many kids are on their phones versus actually having conversations. Definitely issues with that. You've then got false security. So because you're on a website which is well known, you have a false security, but it's actually vulnerable for hacking, leaking information, malware, identity theft. But because you think it's a well-known website, or because it's online, you put confidential posts on there, but not really thinking about actually what happens if something bad happens. So if you're putting, for example, a photo which shows your school uniform online, but to your friends, and you get hacked, someone's being able to build up a profile about you, which could lead to identity theft, because they know what school you go to, they know what country you live in, they'll make a guess of how old you are, they'll find out your name easily through your social media, so they'll be able to start building information about you, leaking information or selling information. So let's have a look. We looked at the negatives and we looked at the positives. which is the impact of social media. So let's have a look at everything we've looked at. Oh, no, bad. Let's have a look at what we looked at today. We looked at the types of social media. We looked at the functions. Those functions are linked to, let me just make this really obvious, there's a link between them. We looked at the purpose of social media on the individual and the organisation. We looked at data protection. We looked at GDPR, which is the European laws of protecting your data. We looked at the impact for the individual online, and we looked at the impact of the organisation online. We looked at organisations paying third parties. We looked at social isolation and bullying. We looked at the use of social media to get information about other people. We looked at trolling. We looked at power and pain, such as Ivan Toney having so much power online. Is it right for him to then diss Brentford Football Club, or Beyonce, or J.K. Rowling and her transgender viewpoints? We looked at deliberate miscommunication online. We looked at libel, making comments online about somebody else like King Declan, sharing posts which could get you into trouble. We then looked at the impact of social media, which was all about the positives, such as creative explosion, such as finding people with similar interests, such as staying in contact with people, meeting new people, such as the digital divide is less, so people from remote access, so mobility is better, such as education, where you can do self-learning, have diverse views. You could argue a better quality of life because you're accessing a wider range of materials, tutorials, professionals, but also the negatives of social media, such as cyberbullying, such as isolation, such as reduced social skills and interaction, such as oversharing information, such as false security like identity theft and hacking, etc. So, this is the main part, although we seem to have gone to the left quite a lot in this diagram. Okay, folks.